Distilling time. The bubbles have slowed to almost nothing. On the first batch, it's been about 2 weeks or so. Second one's still churning along over here. So, I have to take an electric pump because I'm not lifting that 1,000,000-pound thing. I don't know what 15 gallons times 8 pounds a gallon-ish is, plus the weight of the container. I'm not lifting that. So, I gotta pump the liquid from that height up over here to what will be the still when I put it together. False bottom's been removed. So step one, get that liquid pumped into here, which of course will already be set up on the burners you saw from the first video for heating. Then the top will get put on and clamped down, everything. And then the worm will sit over here with the doubler. This big old cooler will be our closed water loop. So we're loading it up full of all of our containers full of ice. I'm just gonna let that melt in there overnight and then pull the plastic out, each one of the containers out, but then it'll be really icy cold water with giant ice cubes. Basically, all these tubs we just fill up with ice, freeze, and then however many will fit in the cooler is enough. And by the time you're finished with the whole distilling run, the water's still cold. Well, maybe 70 degrees, 75 degrees at the end when it starts off, of course, at 40 degrees or so. Those are all the clamps, so I'll clamp the lid on the still. So I'm not gonna show you each step, but I'll show you when it's finished, and I may film the pumping of the keg liquid from there into here. So here's the setup. Preliminarily, things put in place. It's a geometry game. These are the stainless steel fittings. They're not tightened yet. You have to tighten them with a wrench lightly. Anyway, you get the idea. There's stainless steel ferrules, and then they're quick connect because you just have to put it on there and tighten it with a wrench. I still need to put a temperature probe in here. It has stainless steel nuts in the inside. I pinch it, just Teflon that holds it. More stainless steel fittings. This is the doubler or thumper. I had to figure out how high I wanted it so that the curves on the copper pipes made it up, but you can see what happens in here, maybe. On the one that comes from the still, it connects to another stainless steel fitting. It has a copper tube that goes almost to the bottom of the doubler. It sits about right here, that height. And you want some alcohol in here, and you want at least the surface of the liquid, which you can make something tasty, like peaches or apples or something like that if you want to add flavor. Then the alcohol steam will go down, and it will heat this up. Eventually, it'll bubble through here, then the vapors will come up and get double distilled and go out that copper pipe that goes to the worm. So, game of geometry with this setup to get that 80 quart stock pot on the burners with the tubes lined up so that you can get to the thumper or doubler. It'll bubble through that and then get to the worm. Over here's our cooler that's completely full of ice. That circulates water from an aquarium pump from this tube into here. This is a sealed bucket, so when it gets up to this height, it drains back into the cooler, so that's a closed loop just between the two. And there's enough ice in there to keep the thing cold the whole time, so. And then you can reuse it. Actually, when it's finished with the process, you can pour the water back from the cooler, back into the plastic tubs, and back into the freezer and reuse it. That's it. Now I still haven't pumped the liquid in here. All these are empty and not sealed. This will get sealed with all those wood clamps. So I just wanted to show you mainly these stainless steel fittings that you have to tighten up each time, but they're easy to break apart and reusable. Unfortunately, I don't have my seals yet for this pot or this pot, so you have to go old school. It still has the PTFE seal in there, but wherever the end of it is, I do have to dop it up with a little bit of oatmeal to seal it. It works fine. It does get the job done, but you know, it's a little messier and a little less sterile, so I'm wanting to get the food grade silicone seal between these. But anywho, next up, pumping the liquid. Another quick note about setup. These are nice because the way they're set up, you hold this one, you tighten this one. So you do the operation all from outside. You don't have to reach underneath there. Same with that one. You hold the bottom part, you tighten the top. That's how it clamps together. Just like this one, which I need to clean. Get the idea. Last thing, if you end up with a seal situation like I've got, try to arrange it so that the split in that PTFE seal, I made a mark with magic marker here, is someplace where you can manage it. So I point them the same direction. So when I get all the clamps on there and everything buttered up, and it first starts getting up to temperature, and you verify and check for leaks and everything, have them back here where you can check it and monitor it and reapply your oatmeal paste or whatever you need someplace accessible. Doing everything's backwards from what I said. So I filled up the worm bucket first. You can see it seals, doesn't leak out the grommet. Anyway, once the aquarium pump is on, it'll circulate between the two, but I'm not gonna pump the keg out next. What I'm gonna do next is put apple juice concentrate in here. You can see again where that copper tube ends. I'm gonna put water, apple juice concentrate, and the tails from the last batch, which is about, I don't know, 135 proof, something like that. Put that in there and then get this all sealed up. So the last thing I'm gonna do is actually transfer the fermented liquid into the distiller there. Well, let's see what it looks like. This is the high-tech method. It's gonna be tricky. It's an auto siphon tube hooked to a transfer pump that's kept clean and used only for this and rinsed. Hooked to a battery, and then there's a discharge tube that goes up and in. Let's see what it looks like. This is a brand new clamping system, so they're all stainless steel parts, but I've since figured out that this was dumb, and I have wing nuts to replace these nuts with for next time. Ah, come on. It's hard to do one-handed. See what our delicious concoction looks like. There it is, ready to go. Too many moving parts to show you the auto siphon priming because I was afraid this was going to fall off, the battery tip over. I need to modify my mounting system, but it transfers pretty fast. This is how much is coming out of there. Pretty good flow. And it transfers pretty quick too. You can see it going down. All right, got it transferred. Got the oatmeal on there. It's ugly, but man, the old schoolers knew it does work. I've tested it. I've never had leaks on it. And if you do, you just touch it up a little bit more and good to go, but then you got to clean it off when you're done. Hardens up during the process because there's heat on it. But anyway, it does work. The next thing is put 1,000 of these wood clamps on, and they are pretty strong wood clamps. And that pinches these two together. That PTF seal is in there. Bada bing. That's it. Then I got to wheel it over, put it on the timer, and it should be ready to start heating about 6 in the morning. It won't be hot enough to start producing until about 9, but that's fine. I'd like to have that low heat. I don't have to worry about it. It's all electric, no open flame. So that's what's going to happen next. Okay, all systems are go and tested. I have my IP camera here that can view the temperature probe screen there. I got to put a pair of safety glasses in front of it. Otherwise, it's too bright when the basement lights are off. Anyway, you get the idea. I can see if it started to drip, which it won't because I'll be up and down there dealing with it before then, but at least it'll be most of the way heated up. So everything's sealed, the pump is verified, the drain works, everything cycles. Both heaters come on with 2 different timers on 2 different 15 amp circuits. Everything should be good, and I can monitor it remotely from upstairs. As I first wake up and have my coffee, I can verify the temperature is climbing, but it's nowhere near the point of the alcohol evaporating. And certainly when it gets near that point, I will be down here babysitting it, checking for leaks, making sure everything's fully copacetic. You got to remember, you're creating a very flammable gas that then does supposed to condense, come out of here, but if it leaks anywhere, you're venting a very explosive gas. You don't want to do that. So you need, when it gets up to temperature, you need to be there to babysit it, verify the whole thing is sealed, and I will certainly do that. So it's the next morning. We're getting up to temperature. You can see our oatmeal seals are holding nicely. No leaks anywhere. Pump is flowing. It's very, very cold. There's all kinds of condensation on the outside of that. Like I said, it will last the whole run, so that's good enough. All systems go. I gotta put a pair of shades in front of the display because otherwise the camera can't pick it up. Believe it or not, the LED segments are too bright. Anyway, I was able to monitor that. I'm a light sleeper, so I checked it a few times. It says it's coming up temperature, but it's taking about 3 hours to get to 158. And that's fine. It's really slow, but then I don't have to worry about anything. With those 2 hot plates, it will get the job done. It'll take a long time to get hot, but I don't have to worry about it getting too hot, which is nice. And the timers did their job. They came on. There's one of the crummy timers, but they're rated at 1800 watts, 1875 watts, I think. The burners are less than that, so I thought, well, it'll work, and it does. So there you go. Won't be long, and we'll have something coming out. Getting there, we're not there yet. Definitely, we have boiling out of the first vessel, of the main part of the still, going over here to the thumper, or doubler, because the line is hot, and I don't think the phone will pick it up, but I can feel it bubbling. So the vapor is going through there, and it will heat this up. You don't have a separate heater for this. That steam coming through there will heat that liquid, and then the vapor will go out through the condenser. So it'll be a little while still before it gets to actually producing anything, at least with these baby heaters. Okay, it's finally going. The temperature's not right. That's what it looks like. You got to throw away the 4 shots, is what they call it. That's where the nasty methanol that makes you go blind and bad stuff you don't want in there is. You can't get a straight answer either if you look, and if you have non-trustworthy temperature equipment like this, you can't trust the temperature that you see to make your determination. So the safe way to do it is make sure you discard enough, period, regardless, to get rid of those. And anyway, the rule of thumb that I think I would agree with from online that I found is about 1/3 of a pint glass per 5 gallons. So then this is 15 gallons, almost 15 gallons, you throw away almost a pint. So that's what I'm going to do, and then you start collecting the rest. I'll hook the silicone, food grade silicone tube on there once I throw away these 4 shots, and that will run down and drizzle over the charcoal and go on into the glass carboy, and that's how we'll collect the rest. Okay, we finally got there. That was the last of the 500 milliliters of heads, and I put the silicone tube on it. Again, the temperature's not right. It's just I know what it is for this still. In this particular still, we've got about 5 degrees to go, and you're at the end. You're in the tails, and you got to shut it down. Well, I mean, you collect the tails anyway to use for the next batch to extract some more of the ethanol out, but you don't keep that for drinking purposes. But anyway, now is when you can kind of relax, because you know everything's sealed up, there's no leaks, it's producing, you've eliminated the 4 shots and heads, now you're collecting what you want to keep to drink. and it's going to take, you know, you saw how fast it dripped out. It's going to take quite a while, number of hours, to drive that, no, I don't know, 1.5 gallons of ethanol out. And it won't come out pure. There's some water vapor with it, so you're probably going to get about 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons out of here before you know, before you're said and done. But probably 1.5 gallons that you'll keep to drink. Then there'll be a jar and a half of tails, and that's it. That's the most that you can reasonably get out of a 15-gallon batch. But still a lot. Once you cut that back, that's, you know, averaging maybe 145 proof at the end when you've used a doubler. So you've got 1.5 gallons at 145 proof. That's a lot. That's a lot when you cut it back to 80 proof or 40% to make a whiskey or whatever. That's a lot of bottles in one run. So I really only set this thing up once or twice a year and run a couple batches, and that's more than we drink all year, really. Store some of it. Friends come over, they might have some, but it's a lot to set up. So I wanted a bigger system to do the 15 gallons versus 5, so I don't have to, for a whole year's worth, I don't have to set it up but once or twice. But it's nice to have the smaller rigs too, so if you're more industrious and you want to experiment with recipes and whatnot, then those are easier to produce, those smaller batches, and keep accurate records. I wish I was that diligent. I can't make myself do it just yet, where I would have a bunch of 5-gallon runs of various recipes and take meticulous notes so that if one comes out delicious, I can reproduce that again and again and again. I haven't gotten quite that organized yet. I keep track of what I do, but I haven't actually experimented very much with the grain bills or different yeast strains, that kind of thing. But I'd like to graduate to that point. I'd like to graduate to the point of making my own oak barrels also. I've made some oak cylinders with hose clamps that did function. They did swell up and seal tight, but they're nowhere near as good as a barrel, a mini barrel. So I'm going to be working on making eventually, some woodworking jigs and getting some white oak and be able to make my own mini whiskey barrels for aging. That's the eventual goal. And then if I get a recipe where I'm super satisfied with it, do a bunch of runs and just store it and let that age for maybe a year or two on the shelf before cracking them open. But anyway, that's it. We're at the final part, so the next thing will just be cutting off when we get to the tails, and then bottling it up, labeling it. So just to take a sampling, I don't know, I got almost 1 gallon out. But anyway, I poured what was in there in here just to test it. We're still going over here. But anyway, it's pretty impressive. There's the alcohol gauge, and according to this, it's about, I don't know, 75% alcohol. Pretty hot, 150 something proof, so that's good. That's the average so far. I was gonna wait till this jar fills up and see where it's at. As the run goes on, the alcohol concentration will drop. That will probably be 140 proof, and it'll get all the way down to maybe 125 at the end. Okay, on this system, once that gets to 200, which is not accurate, but like I said, for this system and where the probe is at and the type of probe, etc., I know that's the cutoff. So I can collect about 1 more quart jar for use as tails next time to put that in the doubler. But that's it. So I'd say I got, I don't know, it's hard to see from the camera view, but I don't know, 1.25 gallons at about 170, 155 proof total. Maybe a little bit less, but that's a lot. But that's why it's, you know, I feel like you almost have to do the 15-gallon size. Otherwise you'd be getting, you know, a quart out of a 5-gallon batch at that concentration. I mean, you get 2 or 3 quarts of 80 proof, but you get the idea. It's a lot of setup, same amount of setup and work. You might as well have a bigger system, is what my thinking was. But anywho, that's it. I just got to bottle it up and save that tails. Then I'll turn off the power to everything, just let it sit overnight and cool down, and drain and clean everything out. I'll put fill back up all the tubs and whatnot, remake ice cubes to get ready for the next batch, which will be done here in probably 3 or 4 days. Final yield, 3175 is full, and 1 leftover jar for tails. Then the easy way to do it is just fill all the containers right out of the water in the cooler and stick them back in the freezer. Boop.